My name is Ellie Morgan. I'm 22 years old, work 40 hours a week, pay my own rent, have a retirement plan, and somehow still find time to study business administration at night. Meanwhile, my older brother, Nathan, 30, still lives in our parents' basement in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he's supposedly figuring things out while working temp jobs and playing guitar in a band that's never had a paid gig. If you think I sound bitter, maybe you're right. But it didn't start out that way. I grew up in a quiet suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota. Our house was modest. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with a small garden where Mom grew tomatoes in the summer. Dad worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and Mom was an elementary school teacher. We weren't rich, but we never wanted for anything essential. Dad always emphasized financial responsibility. Save 20% of everything you earn, he'd say. Future you will thank, present you. Nathan is 8 years older than me. Growing up, I idolized him. He was smart, funny, and seemed to excel at everything without trying. He got straight A's in high school, was captain of the debate team, and could have gone to any college he wanted. Our parents were so proud when he got accepted to the University of Minnesota with a partial scholarship. Everyone expected great things from him. I was just 10 years old when Nathan left for college. I remember helping him pack his dorm essentials, feeling a mix of sadness and pride. When you come visit me on campus, I'll show you the best spots for ice cream, he promised. I held on to that promise for months, but Nathan's college experience wasn't what anyone expected. He changed majors 3 times. First English literature, then psychology, then communications. He'd call home talking about professors who didn't get him and courses that were pointless for the real world. By his junior year, he was on academic probation. Mom and Dad tried to be supportive. He's finding himself, Mom would say. Creative minds need time to explore. Dad was less patient, but still opened his wallet whenever Nathan needed just a little help with textbooks or rent. I started high school just as Nathan was dropping out of college. He moved back home, taking over the basement, turning it into what Mom optimistically called his studio apartment. He talked about starting a tech business, writing a screenplay, joining a friend's startup. Nothing materialized. Meanwhile, I was working part-time at a local coffee shop, saving every dollar I could. Not because I was naturally frugal, but because I'd watched what happened when you weren't. Nathan's pattern became predictable. Excitement about a new venture, borrowing money from our parents, then inevitable disappointment when things fell through. When I was 16, I overheard my parents arguing about money for the first time. Dad's voice was tight with anger. We can't keep funding his finding himself phase. We have Ellie's college to think about. Mom sounded tired. What are we supposed to do? Throw him out? He's our son. He's 26 years old, Karen. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never be a financial burden to my parents. I graduated high school with a solid GPA and a substantial savings account. Unlike Nathan, I didn't apply to prestigious universities. Instead, I enrolled in the local community college with plans to transfer to a state school later. My parents seemed almost confused by my practical approach. You could aim higher, sweetie, Mom suggested. We've been saving for your education. I know, I told her, but this makes more sense financially. What I didn't tell her was that I'd seen their financial statements when I helped Dad organize his home office. Their retirement savings had significant withdrawals, coinciding perfectly with Nathan's failed attempts at independence. The summer after my high school graduation, I found a small apartment with a classmate. It was nothing special. Cramped kitchen, temperamental heating, laundry in the basement, but it was mine. Well, ours. The rent was $800 a month, split 2 ways. My share plus utilities came to about $500. My coffee shop job covered it barely. You don't have to move out so soon, Dad said when I signed the lease. There was relief in his eyes that contradicted his words. I want to, I said. It's time. Nathan helped me move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs while offering unsolicited life advice. Don't waste your 20s working too hard, Ellie. These are the years to explore, make mistakes, find your passion. I nodded, not trusting myself to respond without sarcasm. His exploration had cost our parents thousands of dollars and countless sleepless nights. That first year of living on my own was brutal. I worked mornings at the coffee shop, afternoons as an administrative assistant at a local insurance office, and took evening classes. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, bought clothes from thrift stores, and learned to fix things myself rather than calling maintenance. I was exhausted most of the time, but there was something deeply satisfying about paying my own bills. Meanwhile, Nathan got a job at an electronics store that lasted almost 6 months, his longest employment to date. He quit because his manager didn't respect his creative input on how to arrange the smartphone display. He started a podcast about indie music that got 17 subscribers, mostly relatives. He joined a recreational soccer league, sprained his ankle, and spent 2 months on our parents' couch recovering. I stopped by the house for Sunday dinners when my schedule allowed. These dinners became increasingly uncomfortable as Nathan's temporary stay stretched from months into years. He'd dominate conversations with his latest idea, a food truck concept, an app for dog walkers, a YouTube channel reviewing craft beers. Mom would nod encouragingly while Dad silently pushed food around his plate. By the time I turned 20, I'd transferred to the University of Minnesota. I was still working both jobs, but I'd moved to a slightly better apartment and even had a used car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic with fading paint and excellent gas mileage. I paid for it in cash, $5,000 that represented 2 years of careful saving. "Must be nice to have things handed to you," Nathan commented when he saw the car. I nearly choked on my disbelief. Handed to me? I worked 60-hour weeks for this car. He shrugged. "Yeah, but you've always had it easier. Different expectations, you know. More opportunities." I wanted to point out that he'd had every opportunity. More than me, in fact. But I bit my tongue. It wasn't worth the argument. Besides, our parents were watching with that anxious look they get whenever Nathan and I disagree, like they're afraid I'll say the things they can't. Last Christmas, things finally came to a head. Nathan announced he was starting a social media management company. All he needed was seed money, $5,000 for a new laptop, software, and business cards. Dad hesitated. "We've been through this before, Nathan." "This is different," Nathan insisted. "I've done market research. There's real demand for this." "What research exactly?" I asked. The question just slipped out. Nathan glared at me. "Not everyone needs a detailed spreadsheet, Ellie. Some people have intuition for business opportunities. Intuition doesn't pay bills." "Kids, please," Mom interjected. "It's Christmas." After dinner, Dad pulled me aside. "I need your honest opinion," he said quietly. "Should we help him with this business idea?" I was stunned. My father, who'd taught me everything about financial responsibility, was asking for my advice. I looked at him closely and noticed for the first time how tired he looked, how much older than his 58 years. "No," I said gently. "I don't think you should." He nodded, relief and sadness mingling in his expression. "That's what I thought too." Later, I overheard my parents telling Nathan they couldn't fund his new venture. His response was predictably dramatic. Accusations of favoritism, reminders of how they'd always supported my endeavors, untrue. And finally, the guilt trip about how they didn't believe in him. "We do believe in you," Mom said tearfully. "But you need to believe in yourself enough to make this happen on your own." Nathan didn't speak to any of us for 2 weeks after that. When he finally started coming to dinner again, he announced he'd found investors for his business idea. We later discovered these investors were friends who'd loaned him a few $100s each, most of which went to a gaming console rather than business expenses. That brings me to now. I'm in my final year of college, working as an assistant manager at the insurance company, and renting a decent 1-bedroom apartment. I have student loans, but they're manageable because of my community college start. I cook most of my meals, track my expenses with a budgeting app, and treat myself to dinner out once a month. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. Nathan turned 30 last month. Mom organized a family dinner at their house. Nathan spent most of the evening talking about his new passion, screenwriting. Apparently, he's working on a pilot for a TV series about millennials navigating late-stage capitalism. The irony was apparently lost on him. As I helped Mom clean up after dinner, she asked, "Are you happy, Ellie?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm doing well," I replied automatically. "That's not what I asked." She put down the dish towel and looked at me directly. "All this responsibility you've taken on so young, is it making you happy?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'm satisfied," I said finally. "I like knowing I can take care of myself, but sometimes I wonder what? If I'm missing something by being so practical all the time." Mom smiled sadly. "There's a balance somewhere. Nathan hasn't found it, and maybe you're still looking too, just in different directions." That conversation has been playing in my mind for weeks now. Am I too rigid, too focused on security? Is Nathan actually living more authentically by refusing to conform to expectations? I don't think so, but doubt creeps in sometimes. Last weekend, something unexpected happened. I was grocery shopping when I ran into Nathan at the store. He was in workout clothes, looking surprisingly put together. "Hey," he said, seeming almost embarrassed. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I live nearby," I reminded him. "What brings you to this neighborhood?" I actually got a job at the recreation center, teaching guitar to kids and helping with their after-school program." I raised my eyebrows. "Really? That's great." "It's just part-time," he said quickly, "while I work on my screenplay. Still, it sounds perfect for you. You've always been good with kids." A flash of genuine pleasure crossed his face. "Yeah, it's pretty cool. The pay's not great, but the kids are awesome." We chatted awkwardly for a few more minutes before parting ways. As I watched him leave, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride that he'd found something that suited him, frustration that it had taken so long, and a lingering resentment that he still didn't fully grasp how his choices had affected our family. That night, I called Mom. "Nathan told me about his new job," I said. "Isn't it wonderful?" Her voice lifted with hope. "He's really connecting with those children. His supervisor called last week to tell us how natural he is with them." "Has he mentioned moving out?" I asked. A pause. "No, but your father and I have decided it's time for some changes. We're converting the basement into an actual apartment and charging him rent. Not much, but something." I was speechless for a moment. Wow, how did he take it? Better than expected. He said it makes sense. I think the job is giving him some confidence." After we hung up, I sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset over the city. My apartment isn't fancy, but I've made it mine. Plants in every corner, photos of friends on the walls, a comfortable if slightly worn sofa. Everything purchased with my own money, arranged according to my own taste. There's pride in that, in knowing I've built this life piece by piece. But Mom's question still echoes. Am I happy? The truth is complicated. I'm proud of my independence, but sometimes I'm envious of Nathan's freedom to fail. I resent how our parents supported his endless finding himself journey, but I wonder if I've been too quick to judge him. Maybe his path, meandering and frustrating as it is, will lead somewhere meaningful eventually. What I know for certain is this. I don't regret the choices I've made. Paying my own rent since 18 hasn't been easy, but it's taught me what I'm capable of. And that knowledge, that no matter what happens, I can take care of myself, that's worth every double shift and budget dinner. Still, watching Nathan with those kids, seeing genuine purpose in his eyes for perhaps the first time in years, made me wonder if he's finally finding his way, not in the grand, ambitious schemes he's always chasing, but in something simpler and more authentic. Maybe we're both works in progress, just moving at different speeds. The next day, I did something impulsive. I registered for a photography class, something I've always been interested in but dismissed as impractical. It's on Saturday mornings for 8 weeks, and it cost $300 that wasn't in my carefully planned budget. But as I entered my credit card information, I felt a small thrill of rebellion against my own rigidity. I texted Nathan about it, not sure why I wanted his opinion. "Photography, huh?" he replied. "That's awesome, Ellie. You'll be great at it." Such a simple response, but it meant something coming from him. My practical, responsible path, and his winding, uncertain one, might be converging slightly. Me learning to allow myself some exploration, him beginning to accept some structure. We're still who we are. I'll always check my bank balance before making major purchases, and he'll probably always have a half-finished creative project in the works. But maybe there's room for both of us to grow in each other's direction. Just a little. Last night, Dad called. "Your brother's looking for an apartment," he said, his voice a mixture of pride and disbelief. "Seriously? That's huge. It's a room in a shared house. Nothing fancy, but it's a start." After we hung up, I felt an unexpected lightness. Not because I'd been right all along about responsibility, but because maybe, just maybe, Nathan was finding his own version of independence. And in my own small way, with my impulsive photography class, perhaps I was learning that my worth isn't solely determined by my financial responsibility. I don't know what's next for either of us. I'll graduate soon, possibly pursue a master's degree while continuing to work. Nathan might stick with the teaching job, or find something else that speaks to him, or retreat back to the basement if things get tough. What I do know is that we're both trying to figure out what matters, just on different timelines and with different approaches. And maybe that's okay. This morning, I woke up early to organize my finances for the month. Old habits die hard, but afterward, I took my coffee onto the balcony and watched the sunrise, camera in hand, practicing angles and lighting as the city slowly came alive. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about rent payments or career advancement or my 5-year plan. I was just present, noticing the way the light changed minute by minute, feeling a quiet excitement about capturing something beautiful. Maybe that's what Nathan has been chasing all along, those moments of pure presence, unburdened by practical concerns. And maybe, in my own structured way, I'm learning to make space for them too. I still pay my own rent. I still work hard. I still believe in responsibility and independence. But perhaps there's more to life than proving I can stand on my own 2 feet. Perhaps sometimes it's okay to look up at the sky instead of watching where I'm going. It's a work in progress, this balance between security and exploration, between responsibility and joy. Nathan and I are approaching it from opposite directions, but we might meet somewhere in the middle eventually. Until then, I'll keep paying my rent, saving for retirement, and now, taking photographs of sunrises. Small steps toward a life that's not just stable, but meaningful too. As for Nathan, he's 30 and still figuring things out. But maybe, in our own ways, we all are. This is the first part of the story. The narrative follows Ellie Morgan, a 22-year-old who has been financially independent since 18, and her complex relationship with her 30-year-old brother Nathan, who still lives with their parents. The story explores themes of responsibility, different paths to adulthood, family dynamics, and finding balance between security and personal fulfillment. 3 months have passed since Nathan started his job at the recreation center. I've seen a gradual shift in him, subtle changes that might go unnoticed by someone who hasn't spent years analyzing his patterns of behavior. He mentions the kids he teaches by name now, shares stories about their progress, and even stays late sometimes to help with special events. It's the longest he's held a job in years. I decided to see him in action one Friday afternoon. I told myself it was because I happened to be in the neighborhood, but truthfully, I was curious. The recreation center was housed in an old brick building with basketball courts outside and a colorful mural of children playing along one wall. I slipped in quietly and followed the sound of guitars to a room at the back. Through the door's window, I could see Nathan sitting in a circle with 5 kids around 12 years old. He was demonstrating chord progressions, his head bent attentively toward a girl with braids who was struggling with her finger placement. With gentle patience, he guided her hands, then broke into an exaggerated victory dance when she got it right. The kids erupted in laughter, and I found myself smiling too. This person, animated, encouraging, genuinely invested, seemed like a stranger compared to the Nathan I knew. When the class ended, I waited in the hallway. The kids filed out, guitar cases strapped to their backs, several of them high-fiving Nathan as they passed. He looked up and spotted me, surprise flickering across his face. "Ellie, what are you doing here?" "Just thought I'd see the famous guitar class in action," I said, aiming for casual. "You're really good with them." He shrugged, but I could tell he was pleased. "They make it easy. These kids actually want to learn, you know." We walked to a nearby coffee shop, an unexpected extension to my impromptu visit. Nathan ordered a complicated specialty drink while I stuck with plain black coffee. Some habits die hard. "So," I ventured, stirring my coffee, "Mom says you're looking at apartments?" "Yeah." He traced the rim of his cup. "Found a place with 2 roommates. It's in Uptown, older building but decent space. I move in next month." "That's great," I said, meaning it despite the skeptical voice in my head wondering how long it would last. He must have read my thoughts. "I know what you're thinking. Let's see if he actually goes through with it this time." I didn't say that. "You didn't have to." There was no anger in his voice, just resignation. "I get it. I haven't exactly been Mr. Reliability." I sipped my coffee, unsure how to respond. We'd never had this kind of direct conversation before. Our pattern was passive-aggressive comments from me, defensive deflections from him, then mutual avoidance. "The thing is," he continued, "I always had these big ideas about what I should be doing. Something impressive, you know? Something that would make everyone say, "Wow, Nathan really made it." But I'd get started and then panic when it wasn't immediately perfect. I nodded, remembering all his abandoned projects. "This job, though," he said, perking up. "I'm not expecting to change the world or get rich. I just show up and help these kids learn something cool. And that's enough somehow." For the first time, I felt like I was seeing my brother clearly, not as the disappointing slacker I'd categorized him as, nor as the misunderstood genius he sometimes pretended to be, just a person trying to find his place, making progress in fits and starts. "I'm really happy for you, Nathan," I said, and I meant it. As we parted ways, he asked about my photography class. I showed him a few shots I'd taken around the city. Nothing spectacular, but I was proud of them. He studied them with genuine interest, pointing out details I hadn't even noticed in my own work. "You've got an eye for composition," he said. "Seriously, these are good." His compliments stayed with me for days afterward, warming me in unexpected moments. When was the last time Nathan and I had exchanged genuine encouragement rather than veiled criticism? 2 weeks later, everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening when Mom called. Her voice was tight, controlled in that way that immediately sets off alarm bells. "Your father's had a heart attack." The world tilted. "Is he?" "He's stable," she said quickly. "But he's going to need surgery. Triple bypass." I was already grabbing my keys, calculating the fastest route to the hospital. "I'm on my way. Nathan's here already," she added before hanging up. The hospital was a maze of identical corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear. I found Mom and Nathan in a waiting area, both looking pale and shell-shocked. Mom rose when she saw me, pulling me into a fierce hug. "They're prepping him for surgery now," she explained. "The doctor says his chances are good, but..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Dad was 58, not especially overweight, moderately active, the kind of person who seemed invincible until suddenly he wasn't. "What happened?" I asked, taking a seat beside Nathan, who hadn't spoken yet. "He was mowing the lawn," Mom said. "Came inside saying he had terrible indigestion and his arm hurt. I recognized the symptoms and called 911 immediately." Nathan cleared his throat. The paramedics said her quick action probably saved his life. We settled into the terrible limbo of hospital waiting. Minutes stretched into hours. Mom alternated between pacing and sitting rigidly, clutching her phone as though it might deliver better news if she held it tightly enough. Around midnight, a surgeon in blue scrubs appeared. The operation had been successful, but recovery would be long. Dad was in intensive care, where he'd remain for at least 48 hours. We could see him briefly, one at a time. Mom went first, then Nathan. When my turn came, I wasn't prepared for the sight of my father, always so solid and self-sufficient, connected to monitors and tubes, his skin ashen against the white hospital sheets. I held his hand gently, mindful of the IV line, and whispered promises I wasn't sure he could hear. The next days blurred together. Mom stayed at the hospital almost constantly. Nathan and I took shifts, bringing her food, fresh clothes, and updates from home. We established a rotation for hospital visits so Dad wouldn't be alone for long stretches. On the third day, when Dad was more alert and had been moved to a regular room, the cardiologist met with all of us. The heart attack had been severe. Recovery would take months, not weeks. Dad wouldn't be returning to work anytime soon, possibly not at all. "What about health insurance?" I asked, the practical question bursting out before I could stop it. "And income?" The doctor mentioned short-term disability, then long-term if necessary. Mom explained that Dad's firm had good benefits, but there would still be significant out-of-pocket expenses, and their mortgage had 15 years remaining. As we left the hospital that evening, Nathan pulled me aside in the parking lot. "We need to talk about finances," he said, his expression serious. "Mom's going to need help." I stared at him, surprised that he'd been the one to bring it up. "I know. I've been thinking about it too. I'll move back home," he said decisively. "Save the rent money I would have spent on the apartment and give it to Mom instead." My immediate reaction was skepticism. Nathan sacrificing his independence just when he'd finally been ready to move out? It seemed too convenient. He read my expression perfectly. "I'm not using this as an excuse, Ellie. I want to help. I need to help. Moving home isn't the only way to help," I pointed out. "You could get a second job, increase your hours at the center. I've already talked to my supervisor about picking up more classes," he said. "But living at home means I can help Mom physically too. With yard work, driving Dad to appointments, all of that. His reasoning was sound, which threw me off balance. I was used to being the practical one, the one who thought things through. "What about you?" he asked. "What's your plan?" I hadn't fully formulated one yet. "I can contribute some money each month," I said, "and take over their cell phone bill, maybe some utilities." Nathan nodded. "Between the two of us, we should be able to make a dent." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. This new alliance, unfamiliar territory for both of us. "He's going to be okay," Nathan said finally, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. I swallowed hard against the tightness in my throat. He has to be. The following weeks established a new normal. Dad came home from the hospital with strict instructions about diet, exercise, and medications. Mom took family medical leave from her teaching job to care for him. Nathan moved his few possessions back to the basement, though he insisted on paying rent now, money that went directly toward household expenses. I started driving to my parents' house 3 times a week after work, bringing groceries, helping with chores, and sitting with Dad, while Mom took much-needed breaks. Sometimes I'd find Nathan already there, helping Dad navigate the health insurance portal, or simply keeping him company watching baseball games. One evening, as I was preparing to leave, Mom walked me to my car. "You and Nathan seem to be getting along better," she observed. I shrugged. "Crisis brings people together, I guess. He admires you, you know." She leaned against the car door, preventing me from opening it. "Always has." I laughed. "Nathan? Admires me? We must be talking about different brothers." "I'm serious, Ellie. All those years of criticizing your practical approach, it was his way of dealing with feeling intimidated by you." "That's ridiculous. What could he possibly be intimidated by?" "Your certainty," she said simply. "You've always known exactly what you wanted and how to get it. Nathan's never had that kind of clarity." I thought about this on the drive home, turning Mom's words over in my mind. Had I really always been so certain? It didn't feel that way from the inside. Most of my decisions had been reactive, watching Nathan's struggles and choosing the opposite path. The following Saturday, I arrived at my parents' house to find Nathan coaching Dad through his prescribed walking exercise, 1 slow lap around the block. They were only halfway done, Dad's face flushed with exertion, Nathan's hand hovering near his elbow without actually touching him, respecting Dad's pride while staying close enough to help if needed. I joined them for the second half of the walk, the 3 of us moving at a glacial pace that would have frustrated me a month ago, but now felt like a victory. "How's the photography class?" Dad asked between careful breaths. "Good," I said. "We're learning about portrait lighting this week." "You should bring your camera over," Nathan suggested. "Practice on us." Dad nodded. "I'd like that. Documentation of the recovery process." His attempt at humor was so unexpected that Nathan and I both laughed, the sound brightening the quiet suburban street. That night, I had dinner with my boyfriend, Ryan. We'd been dating for about 6 months, a relationship that fit neatly into my organized life. Tuesday night dates, weekend activities planned in advance, clear communication about expectations and boundaries. He was an engineering student with a 5-year career plan as detailed as my own. "How's your dad doing?" he asked, as we settled into our usual booth at our usual restaurant. "Better," I said. "The medication seems to be working. His blood pressure's down." "And how are you doing?" I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. "I'm fine. Busy but managing." Ryan gave me a look that said he wasn't buying it. "Ellie, your dad almost died. It's okay to not be fine." The simple permission broke something loose inside me. To my horror, tears welled up, threatening to spill over in the middle of the crowded restaurant. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words barely audible. "What if he has another heart attack? What if Mom has to stop working permanently to take care of him? Their retirement savings aren't enough, especially after helping Nathan all these years." Ryan reached across the table to take my hand. "You can't control everything, Ellie. Some things just happen, and all you can do is respond as best you can." "That's the problem," I said, frustration edging my voice. I've always believed that if I was responsible enough, prepared enough, I could avoid crises. But Dad did everything right, saved for retirement, had good insurance, took care of his health, and still ended up in cardiac intensive care. "That's life," Ryan said gently. "It's inherently unpredictable." His words, though true, didn't comfort me. If anything, they heightened my anxiety. I'd built my entire identity around being in control, around making smart choices that would insulate me from the chaos I saw in Nathan's life. What did it mean if all that careful planning could be undone by a random blood clot? The next day, Sunday, was Dad's 62nd day post-surgery. The family marked the occasion with a small celebration, his first dessert since the heart attack, a low-sugar apple crisp that Mom had spent hours perfecting. As we gathered in the living room, Dad cleared his throat. "I have an announcement," he said. All of us tensed, anticipating bad news about his health. Instead, he continued, "I've decided to retire early." Mom looked surprised. They'd discussed the possibility, she explained later, but hadn't made any firm decisions. "The firm's offering a decent early retirement package," Dad explained. "Not as much as if I'd worked another 7 years, but enough, especially if we downsize." "Downsize?" I repeated. "You mean sell the house?" Dad nodded. "This place is too big for just 2 people anyway. All those stairs aren't ideal for my recovery. We're thinking of looking at single-level homes, maybe in a smaller community." "That makes sense," Nathan said, while I was still processing the news. Dad turned to him. "This means you'll need to find your own place sooner rather than later, son." Nathan nodded. "I've been saving." And I reached out to those roommates again. "The uptown apartment's still available?" "Good," Dad said, his tone warm with approval. "Very good." Later, as Nathan and I washed dishes side by side, I asked, "Are you really okay with them selling the house?" He scrubbed at a stubborn bit of baked apple. "It's not really about what I'm okay with, is it? It's their house, their decision. But you just moved back in. Temporarily," he reminded me. "This was never meant to be permanent, Ellie. I'm 30 years old. It's beyond time I stood on my own feet." I passed him another plate. "I just didn't expect everything to change so fast. That's the thing about life," he said, unconsciously echoing Ryan's words from the night before. "It changes whether you're ready or not." 2 weeks later, I used my lunch break to view an apartment. Not for me, for Nathan. He had a class he couldn't reschedule, so I offered to check it out and take photos. The building was older than mine, but well-maintained, with original hardwood floors and large windows. The shared living spaces were clean, and his potential roommates, a nurse and a graphic designer, seemed responsible. I sent him detailed pictures with notes about water pressure, neighborhood noise, and proximity to public transportation. That evening, he called to tell me he'd submitted an application. "Thanks for doing that," he said. "Your assessment was really helpful." "No problem." I hesitated, then added, "I'm proud of you, Nathan." A beat of silence. "That's a first." "Not true," I protested. "I was proud when you got that scholarship to college. That was 12 years ago." "Well, I was busy being irritated with you for most of the intervening time." He laughed, a genuine sound without bitterness. "Fair enough." I took a deep breath. "But seriously, Nathan, the way you've stepped up since Dad's heart attack, it's been really impressive." "Thanks," he said softly. "That means a lot, coming from you." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk deepened into night. My photography instructor had taught us about the blue hour, that magical time just after sunset, when the world is bathed in indigo light. I took a few shots of the skyline, experimenting with long exposures. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Dad and I looked at 3 houses today. The last one might be the one." Everything was shifting. The family home where I'd grown up would soon belong to strangers. Dad would no longer be the accountant in the gray suit, coming home each evening with his briefcase and tired smile. Nathan would be living with roommates, paying rent, working a job he actually seemed to enjoy. And me? I was still in my apartment, still working my insurance job, still planning for a master's degree. My life looked the same on the surface, but something inside me had changed. The certainty I'd always clung to, that careful planning could prevent disaster, that responsibility was the ultimate virtue, had been shaken. The following weekend, I helped Mom sort through decades of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep for the new, smaller house, what to give away, what to sell. "I can't believe you're still keeping my middle school artwork," I said, holding up a lopsided ceramic bowl I'd made in 7th grade. "Of course I am," Mom replied, carefully wrapping it in newspaper. "Some things you just don't part with." We worked our way through the living room bookshelves, the kitchen cupboards, the linen closet. In the basement, Nathan was tackling his own archaeological layers of possessions. Sports equipment from high school, textbooks from his abbreviated college career, guitars in various states of repair. "I can't believe how much stuff I've accumulated," he called up the stairs. "I don't even remember buying half of this." "That's because you didn't," Mom called back. "We did." We all laughed, the sound echoing through the half-empty house. By late afternoon, we'd filled Mom's car with donations for the thrift store. Nathan volunteered to drive them over, leaving Mom and me to continue sorting through photo albums in the dining room. "Your brother's really changed these past few months," Mom said, carefully removing school portraits from an old album and placing them in a new, smaller one. "I've noticed," I admitted. "It's like he finally grew up." Mom gave me a thoughtful look. "Or maybe he was always growing up, just at his own pace. And now you're finally seeing it." I considered this. Maybe I've been too hard on him. And maybe he needed that push. She slid another photo into place. "You two balance each other out, you know. Always have. His creativity and your practicality, his optimism and your realism, his irresponsibility and my control issues," I suggested wryly. She smiled. "Something like that. But you're both more complex than the roles you've assigned each other." When Nathan returned, the three of us ordered pizza and ate it picnic style on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes and memories. Dad was at his cardiac rehab appointment with a neighbor who'd volunteered to drive him. "Remember when we used to have picnics in here during thunderstorms?" Nathan asked, folding his pizza in half the way he'd done since childhood. "You were terrified of thunder," I recalled. Mom would build a fort with blankets over the coffee table, and we'd hide inside with flashlights. "I wasn't terrified," he protested. "I was creating ambiance." We laughed, and for a moment, I could see us clearly. Not as the people we'd become, with all our complications and frustrations, but as the children we'd been. Nathan, protective and imaginative, me, determined and analytical. Both of us secure in the knowledge that this house, these parents, would always be our safe harbor, except the house would soon belong to someone else. Our parents were entering a new chapter, one that included medical restrictions and financial recalculations. The safe harbor was changing shape. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, interrupting my thoughts. "You've got that wrinkle between your eyebrows." "Just change," I said. "Everything's different now." "Not everything," Mom said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Some things stay the same, no matter what." The next morning, I met Ryan for breakfast before he left for a conference in Chicago. Our relationship had been strained lately, my family crisis absorbing time and emotional energy I would normally invest in us. "I've been thinking," I said as we waited for our food. "Maybe we should take that trip we talked about. To the Grand Canyon." Ryan looked surprised. We'd discussed the trip months ago, but had put it off, both citing work commitments and the need to save money. "What brought this on?" he asked. "I thought you were focused on helping your parents financially right now." "I am," I said. "But Dad's heart attack made me realize we don't know how much time we have. Some experiences shouldn't be postponed indefinitely." Ryan studied me with curiosity. "That doesn't sound like the Ellie I know." "Maybe I'm evolving," I said, only half joking. He smiled, reaching for my hand across the table. "I like it. Let's look at dates when I get back from Chicago." That afternoon, I met Dad at his cardiologist appointment. He'd progressed to driving short distances on his own, but the medical center was too far from home for him to feel comfortable making the trip solo. In the waiting room, he patted my hand. "Thanks for taking time off work for this." "Of course," I said. "That's what family does. You've been doing a lot of that lately, taking time off, helping your mother, driving me around. I don't mind." He nodded, his gaze direct. "I know you don't, but I worry about you, Ellie." "Me? I'm fine. You're the one we're worried about. I'm on the mend," he said. "But you've always put so much pressure on yourself. Even as a little girl, you were so serious, so determined to do everything perfectly." I shrugged, uncomfortable with his assessment. "I just like being responsible. Responsibility is good," he agreed. "Essential, even. But it can become a cage if you're not careful. A way of avoiding risk, avoiding life." "I'm not avoiding life," I protested. "I'm building a stable one." "Are you? Or are you just creating a fortress against uncertainty?" His tone was gentle but persistent. "I spent most of my life focused on security. Financial, professional, personal. And there's value in that, no question. But if my heart attack taught me anything, it's that security is mostly an illusion." Before I could respond, The nurse called his name. As he stood, he squeezed my shoulder. Just something to think about. And I did think about it, all through his appointment and the drive home. Had my pursuit of stability become a kind of prison? Was I so afraid of making Nathan's mistakes that I'd overcorrected, becoming rigid and risk-averse? These questions followed me through the next few weeks as spring mellowed into early summer. Dad continued to improve, albeit slowly. Mom adjusted to the idea of early retirement and a new home. Nathan signed the lease on the uptown apartment and began the process of moving in, one carload at a time. And I found myself at a crossroads. My lease was up for renewal. Ryan and I had been dating for nearly 8 months, and he'd hinted at the possibility of moving in together. A practical step that would reduce our expenses and simplify our busy schedules. On paper, it made perfect sense. We were compatible, shared similar values, and both preferred quiet evenings at home to late nights out. The financial benefits were obvious. It was exactly the kind of sensible decision I'd built my adult life around. Yet, I hesitated. One Saturday, instead of helping Nathan move furniture to his new apartment as planned, I woke with a fever and body aches, a summer cold that left me depleted and miserable. I texted him to cancel, fully expecting to spend the day alone with tea and Netflix. To my surprise, he showed up at my door 2 hours later with soup from my favorite deli and a bag of cold medicines. "You didn't have to do this," I said, stepping back to let him in. "Don't you have moving to do?" "The guys from the recreation center are helping," he explained, setting the soup container on my coffee table. "I can spare an hour to check on my sick sister." The role reversal was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. Nathan, unreliable, self-absorbed Nathan, had put someone else's needs before his own convenience. He insisted on heating the soup and making me tea before leaving to continue his move. As he gathered his keys, he paused at the door. "Hey, I've been meaning to ask, what do you think about coming to the center's summer showcase? The kids are performing the songs they've been learning. It's 2 weeks from now." "I'd love to," I said, genuinely touched by the invitation. He grinned. "Great. They're nervous about playing for an audience, but I keep telling them they're ready." After he left, I curled up with my soup and a strange new feeling, pride in my older brother, mixed with a dawning recognition that perhaps I'd underestimated him all along. Not just his potential, but his capacity for growth and change. The following week, I invited Nathan to dinner at my apartment, a first in our adult relationship. I made pasta, nothing fancy, and we ate on the balcony as the summer evening cooled around us. "So," he said between bites, "what's going on with you and Ryan? Mom mentioned you might be moving in together." I twirled pasta around my fork, buying time. "We've discussed it. It makes sense financially." "That's the only reason to move in with someone." He raised an eyebrow. "No, of course not. We care about each other. We're compatible." "Sounds like you're describing a business merger, not a relationship." I bristled. "Not everyone needs grand passion, Nathan. Some of us prefer stability." There's that word again. He set down his fork. "You know, for years I resented how you and Dad talked about stability like it was the ultimate virtue. But now I get it. Stability is important. I just don't think it's enough on its own." I looked away, uncomfortable with his insight. "What would you suggest? Quitting my job to follow my passion? Not all of us have the luxury of exploration." "That's not what I'm saying." His voice was patient. "It's not an either-or situation. You can be responsible and still leave room for joy, for spontaneity, for growth." Says the guy who just signed his first lease at 30. He winced. Fair hit, but maybe that gives me perspective. I've lived the completely unstructured life, and yeah, it was a mess. But from where I stand, it looks like you've gone too far in the other direction. I wanted to be defensive, to dismiss his observation as another example of Nathan justifying his own choices by criticizing mine. But something in his tone, not judgmental but genuinely concerned, made me pause. "Mom and Dad have been saying similar things," I admitted, "that I'm too focused on security. They worry about you." "They worry about me?" I laughed incredulously. "After spending the last decade worrying about you?" He smiled ruefully. "I know, ironic, right? But yeah, they do. We all do, a little." "Well, you can stop. I'm doing fine." "Are you?" he asked quietly. "Are you happy, Ellie?" It was the same question Mom had asked months ago, and I still didn't have a good answer. I'm stable, I said finally. I'm independent. That's what I wanted. Is it still what you want? The question lingered between us, unanswered.